Hello and welcome along to the second of our Sligo GAA Coaching and Games webinar series. This afternoon we are going to turn our attention towards mental skills, health and well-being. My name is Darragh Cox, I'm a GPO in Sligo and I'm going to be MC for this evening's event. We've three very special guests we're going to introduce you to very shortly. But among those in the background helping out today is Performance GDA with Sligo GAA, Louise Keane. Say hello, Louise.
Hi guys, thanks Darragh, and just a huge thanks to the lads for doing the webinar tonight. It's going to be a great resource for I suppose not just people around our own county but around the country as well. So really looking forward to it.
Great, Louise, thanks for that. Later on in the show, we're going to be speaking with Castleconnor clubman Kevin McDonnell, a former Sligo captain, of course, and indeed a player that has represented Sligo at minor, junior, senior and under 21 level, indeed some of that, all in the one season. We'll get the thoughts of Kevin and a bit some of his experiences in dealing with mental skills a little later on. We'll also be chatting to Jimmy Smith from the Drumcliffe Ross's Point Club. Jimmy's been a coach for a number of years now with his club, but for the last 5 years has also been involved with the Sligo Academies and is currently involved with the Sligo Ladies Under 16 team as well as a coach. Jimmy also works in the area of health, well-being and addiction with his job in the HSC. So looking forward to chatting a little later on to both Jimmy and Kevin. Our main guest for this evening is real professional and expert in this area, a mental skills coach, formerly with Munster Rugby, but a Sligo native in CATHAL Sheridan, of course a long-time player with Munster as well. CATHAL has recently been appointed to a new position of Director of Rugby with UL Bohemians. We wish him well with that role, and probably most importantly of all, a former footballer and hurler indeed with the Clare Strand Health Club in Sligo. CATHAL, thanks a million for giving us your time for this afternoon's webinar.
No problem at all there. Pleasure to be here, man.
Okay, Carl, I'll let you take it away from here, and really looking forward to the next 15 or 20 minutes. Carl is going to run us through just some of his own teachings and learnings over a varied career, and then we'll chat to Kevin and Jimmy a little bit after that.
Great stuff. Thanks, Darragh. I'll just start by sharing my screen there, and hopefully we can get it up. Is my screen sharing okay there?
Yeah, that's fine, Carl.
It'll be good. There's that on our first slide. We are.
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful. Well, just to add on to what Darragh said there, I'm living in Limerick now at this point, but I'm a very proud Sligo native, so it's a absolute pleasure and a privilege to be involved in this. Is that my dad is from Enniscrone, from Culleans to be a bit more specific, so. He's always been very proud of being a Sligo man, and look, it's where I was born and bred, and something I'm always very proud of. Unlike one of the other guests you guys are going to be speaking to later on, Kevin, I didn't play at every level for Sligo. I played a couple of games for the junior team 1 year, I think, but that was about the height of it. The rest of my football and hurling career was very much based with Clare Strand Hill, so please don't hold that against me if you're from another club. I'm going to just touch on a few areas to begin with, and we're going to try and make this into a bit of a discussion at the tail end of it. So realistically, what the focus is going to be on that word resilience, I suppose, what it is, and what's most important if we're to get nothing out of the next few minutes is that resilience is something that can be developed and can be trained. It is not a static, it is not a standalone trait that we either have or we don't, and that's really, really important. If we got nothing else out of this, is that we can all develop this and we can all train it, and I'm sure as we go into discussion with Jimmy and Kevin and everyone else at the end, we can get into a little bit more depth on it, but I'm just going to touch on a few of the overview and the high level areas on it to begin with. As Darragh said, I'm mental skills coach with Munster Rugby. You've already seen my face on screen, so I just put up a picture of my dog because I put him into every single presentation, and that's just a selfish thing. So there's a picture of my dog, Ralph. He's also black and white as well, so I thought this would be a pretty good match. As I mentioned there, so to start with, is resilience is a dynamic process. It is something that moves, it changes. It's not just one thing, it is a number of things. There's a researcher by the name of Mustafa Sarkar. This guy is one of the foremost authorities. He works with, he's a great researcher, but he also works in quite a lot of elite sports, and his expertise on the area of resilience. And this is probably one of his big findings, is that it is a dynamic process. It is related to the context you're in, the environment you're in. It is not just about you and your innate ability to say, okay, yes, I am a resilient person, or no, I'm not a resilient person. It can move and it can change. Yes, it is about performance, is an important thing to note, is that it can be about performance. What do you like when you're on the field and you're down 5 points at halftime? What do you like when your man's on top of you? What do you like when things aren't going well? How do you bounce back? How do you react in those situations? What do you like in those different environments? So it is about performance, but what is also really, really important, and more important when we're even talking about performance, is it's also about well-being. So it's also about yourself, taking care of yourself, because well-being and performance are inextricably linked. Those two things, they do not work independently of each other. In order to be able to perform at the highest level, in order to be able to achieve your goals, it's really, really important to take care of your own well-being. And when we say the word well-being, sometimes people think that it is a word that means doing yoga, eating fruit, and meditating. And it can mean that, but it is more so to do with your overall well-being. How are you taking care of yourself? What are your relationships like? How do you interact with your friends and family? And I think over the last few months, everybody has been in a pretty challenging situation that way. So when we think of resilience, we need to think about it not just to do with our performance, but also, and more importantly, to do with our well-being. And that it is a process. So resilience is a process. So it's to do with our capacity. It's to do with that interaction that we have with our environment. I suppose an easy way to think about it is, in some situations we maybe feel as if we're quite resilient. We could feel very resilient if we were in a potentially negative situation when we're out on the football field and the hurling field. But what are we like if we were to receive negative criticism in the classroom, where maybe we don't feel as comfortable, or in the family home, or from friends? Sometimes those situations and contexts are different. So being resilient is about understanding the processes and your capacity and how you interact in any given situation. And I suppose one thing to keep in mind about this is that we can grow with this. This is a process, and if there was anything to take from the resilient side to things, is that we can all grow and we can all develop this. So even though we might not feel as if we're doing great at the moment, simply by being able to function when we're faced with a pressurized situation, that is a key component of being resilient. And again, to really drive that home, is that whatever is going on in your life right now, is that this is something that can be developed. We all have the capacity to develop this. It doesn't matter your age profile, where you go to school, what you're doing in the classroom, what you're doing anywhere. This is something that can be developed, and we can all grow and build this. And everybody is accountable to this. I'm going to just introduce you to a couple of people. These people are a lot more smart and intelligent than me, and there may be a good little note, just to, if anyone is making notes, or anyone is in the interest of personal development or sports psychology, these are good little names just to jot down. And the first man is a name by Viktor Frankl. So Viktor, he was Austrian born. He's a neurologist and a psychiatrist. He's the author of a book that was entitled Man's Search for Meaning, an incredible book. He was Jewish, and Viktor was a Holocaust survivor. And he went through, I think it was 4 concentration camps, and he went through some almost unbearable torture and some really, really tough times. But there's a number of quotes that come from his book, that come from many other parts of his research, and I just want to show one when it comes to how we respond to situations. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So our response is always in our control, and that was one thing that he said, is that they were able to take everything from him, his freedom, his food, everything, but they could never take his response from him. And that's quite an extreme version, but it's just to get us thinking about our response is a key bit to how we handle things. Because right now, especially given what has happened over the last few months, when sport has been removed from us, and a lot of things that we're used to have been removed from us, one of the things that we do have in our control is how we decide to respond to that. Not always easy, by the way, but it's worth noting. I'm going to introduce one other person as well, Marcus Aurelius. For some of the older generation, people are probably thinking of the movie Gladiator right now, and they're probably thinking of Russell Crowe. But Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor from back in the day. He's a great Stoic philosopher, and there was a couple of quotes that he would have had in his book Meditations. And again, this is another one when we're talking about adversity. So it's the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So again, when we look at the situation most of us find ourselves in right now, is that nobody could have drawn up what's gone on over the last few months. It's if I hear the phrase unprecedented one more time, I think I'll go a bit mad. But at the same time, none of us could have predicted what's going on. So this entire situation, when sport has been removed from you, for those, maybe the people who are doing their junior cert were absolutely thrilled that the junior cert was removed, but other people who maybe are doing their leaving cert, who this is now an obstacle that you haven't foreseen, this is now the only way through. If you do have an interest in looking further into this, I'd highly recommend maybe taking a look at the book. It's called The Obstacle is a Way, by a man named Ryan Holiday. It's a relatively easy read, and there's some good little bits on how to handle adversity and how to try and turn that into a positive for yourself. On the sporting field, just a quote from the greatest basketball player of all time. And I say that very specifically because there's probably a few people out there right now who think LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. I'm not in the business of comparison, but it is 100% Michael Jordan. And some of you guys might recently have been watching The Last Dance. And look, there are a number of elements that aren't overly positive to the character of Michael Jordan. But when we're talking about how we handle obstacles and how things are thrown at us and what we do with them, I think this is a pretty good quote to keep in mind. I'm going to now go onto just a short video from another basketball player, and most people will probably recognize his name, Kobe Bryant. Kobe, in this video, he's just talking about returning from injury, and he's talking about, okay, how does he handle it? How does he go about it? And again, I'm not going to do too much of an intro into who he is. For those who don't know, he's played 20 years in the league for the Los Angeles Lakers. I think he was an All-Star 18 times. He was a league MVP. He has 5 NBA rings. And one of his great strengths is his ability to articulate his mindset and how he handles situations and what goes into them. So I'm just going to play just a short video. I think it's about 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds in total. So I'll allow this to play.
How hard is it dealing with injuries, though? These are things you don't know where they're coming from or whatever happens. Just all of a sudden, boom, an injury.
You control what you can control. I can't, the Achilles injury, I can't control that. I mean, I did everything humanly possible to be ready every single night. Something like that happens. It's out of your control. It is what it is.
How do you reset and rehabilitate yourself and come back? I mean, that's a serious injury. Yeah. And for a normal person, at that point, that's the end of it. Mm-hmm. It's like you're not going to go through the rehab. You're not going to do all that work to try to come back. What drives you to come back?
The process of it. I want to see if I can. I don't know if I can. I didn't know if I could come back from that. I wanted to find out. I want to see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I always do. Just break everything down to its smallest form, smallest detail, and go after it.
So you never got in front of yourself?
Oh, of course I did. When I did, that's when I had those moments of self-doubt because you're thinking of the end goal, right? So I had to check myself and say, okay, focus on now. And that's a constant dance. It happens all the time. It happens for me now, right, with the shoulder and stuff. And being in the doctor's office and saying, hey, this is a 9-month process. And I just go, I just did this. Like, I just did this. 9 months. I just did 9 months. I got to do it again.
But you reset.
Yeah, it's just like, day by day, just one day at a time.
I quite enjoyed that little bit of a clip from Kobe when he's talking about coming back from an injury and how do you really focus on the minutiae. And I think the key bit to take from that is that you know, he has those moments of self-doubt as well. This guy isn't just infallible. He isn't just absolutely perfect. And that he went through those struggles as well. But at the same time, what was able to get him through those times were being able to focus on the things that were in his control and how he responded each and every day, and not beating himself up if he'd had a bad one. And I think when we're talking about injury and we're talking about the situation that all of us are in right now, is that in many ways, for anyone out there who has been injured in the past, who has suffered any form of an injury or been off the pitch for a while, it can be a crap time, to be honest with you. It can be a tough period, and in many ways right now, sport has been removed for all of us for the past 3 to 4 months, and we hope that it will keep returning the way it is going. But the honest reality that goes with it is we don't really know. So in many ways, all of us are like an injured athlete right now, is that we are dealing with uncertainty and our usual processes have been taken away from us. So I don't know about anyone out there, but certainly when I was coming through as a teenager, sport to me in many ways and being out on the field was a very safe place. And I don't mean that in the case of, you know, home wasn't a safe place, you know, but always, aside from my older brother, every now and again he'd give me a clip. But it was a very safe place in that I meant when I went out there, I felt, you know, I could express myself. You know, I felt from time to time I was good at what I did. I was confident when I was out there and I could enjoy it. I was mixing with my friends and things were just happening. And all of that has been kind of removed over the last while. And I think it is really, really important to take stock of that and to know, okay, that's pretty tough going. Especially for anyone who has great friendships and relationships in your clubs. It's not an easy thing to handle. So it's been tough. So by even getting through that and working our way through that, we're doing something all right. Doesn't mean every day is going to be easy, but it's a good thing to be able to say and look back on and go, do you know what, we got through that time period. And again, just to come back to that, in many ways, it's not everything, but a lot of it is to do with how we respond to a situation. That doesn't always mean it's easy, and in some contexts it's going to be easier than others, but it's important to realize that that is always in our control. When we're talking about actually how we can train it, so if you're looking for one of the definitions that go with this, is that it's a process of adapting in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. What it isn't, okay, and I know there's a lot of text on the screen, it's not necessarily important to take all of that in right now. What it's not is it isn't the absence of experiencing these things. It isn't just avoiding these and these not being real. Because when you look at that list over there on the left, and you look at adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, pretty much all of us will have gone through one, if not all of those, over the last 3 months. In your personal life, in your school life, in your family life, in your sporting life. So it's not the absence of experiencing those, it's the process of trying to adapt in that situation. The last person I'm going to introduce you to with a video before I get to the area that we can probably do a little bit of work on ourselves is a man named Jocko Willink. So Jocko Willink, aside from having one of the most stereotypically masculine names of all time, he is a former Navy SEAL. He's the owner or the author of the Jocko podcast, a very creative name. He's also the author of 2 books called Extreme Ownership and Discipline Equals Freedom. And he's a bit of a nutcase, to be honest with you, but he's also brilliant in many ways. Is that I was fortunate enough to get to see Jocko speak live. So I spent 3 months with the United States military in their performance psychology department back in the tail end of 2018. And I got to see this guy speak to the bunch of cadets coming through. And it was fascinating to I suppose, to see the vulnerability that he would show, but also to show, okay, well, what are the things that we can control and how do we adapt when things go wrong? Because those guys, when they're going into really uncontrollable situations in wartime, it's very much about, okay, things are definitely going to go wrong. If you can be guaranteed of one thing, it's pretty much that something will go wrong, but it's how you decide to look at it. So again, I'm going to play just a short video here again of Jocko, and you just have to forgive the overly cheesy rock music that's over the top of this video. I wasn't able to remove it. It's a bit of an American thing, but I think the message that he delivers is the real thing that we want to take out of this bit.
One of my direct subordinates, one of my guys that worked for me, he would call me up or pull me aside with some major problem, some issue that was going on, and he'd say, "Boss, we got this and that and the other thing," and I'd look at him and I'd say, "Good." And finally, one day he was telling me about some issue that he was having, some problem, and he said, "I already know what you're going to say." I said, "Well, what am I going to say?" He said, "You're going to say good." He said, "That's what you always say. When something is wrong and going bad, you always just look at me and say good." And I said, "Well, yeah, when things are going bad, there's going to be some good that's going to come from it. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better. Oh, mission got canceled? Good. We can focus on another one. Didn't get funded. Didn't get the job you wanted. Got injured. Sprained my ankle. Got tapped out? Good. Got beat? Good. You learned. Unexpected problems? Good. We have the opportunity to figure out a solution. That's it. When things are going bad, don't get all bummed out. Don't get startled. Don't get frustrated. If you can say the word good, guess what? It means you're still alive. It means you're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, well, now you still got some fight left in you.
So again, you'll have to forgive the rock music that went over the top of that, but I think the message is a good one. Is that if we're able to, from time to time, look at a situation and see if we can find some good from it. Doesn't mean we ever hope for bad situations. You would never try to wish that. But if we're able to look at it and go, okay, well, what is the good that I can take from this? And the one example I can give, and I'll just give it on the rugby context. A number of the lads that we've been have gone back into training this week. So we've gone back into pre-season. And I would say that a number of the guys around my age that are kind of, you know, in their late 20s, early 30s, this break from sport and from professional contact for them, it was a little bit annoying for them because they would have had to take a pay cut. So that's a crap situation. They don't want that. But a number of them are looking at it as going, okay, well, this is a chance to give my body a break, one that I maybe would never have gotten the opportunity to do. If you had asked them, would they like to take a pay cut and 6 months out of rugby? No, of course they wouldn't, but find a good in the situation. And again, this is a quote that I think has kept a few of us going to make sure that we don't have any slip-ups on our safety protocols, is that all the other things that go with it, if we can winter this out, if we can get through this, if we're able to function, if we're still able to keep going, we can summer anywhere. So the time will come, and I think it's only when I look at this now is that, you know, it's probably very applicable to in GAA circles, because you're usually used to playing, you know, football and hurling in the summer. So it might be a little bit different in the depths of October and November when times are tough, but I'm sure it'll feel like the summer when we get back out in the pitch. And the last bit, and I'm going to rock through this relatively speedily if I can, because I'm just conscious that I want to be frugal with time if possible. So how can we build resilience? And there are a number of ways that we can do this. And again, this isn't just my thoughts. These are scientifically backed up research points on how we can actually effectively build our resilience. And one of them is building our connections. So that's to do with our relationships and our groups. And that's been a difficult thing to do for the last while, because a lot of our organic, our normal day-to-day stuff have been removed. Going into school, going training, those things are where our normal relationships are found. But trying to really work on those as much as you can in your groups, however you're using your WhatsApp groups, however you're using your mates on Snapchat, Instagram, whatever it is, they can be positive things if we use them in the right way. Taking care of your own well-being, and that is a huge one. And it's one sentence, but there's a whole pile in that. is that taking care of yourself and really being selfish about looking after your mind and looking after your body, and understanding the impact that that can have not only on yourself but on those around you. Trying to find purpose, and again, that's a simple phrase, but there's a lot in it, is that we have to be able to accept the changes that have gone on and still try and figure out some way to move towards our goals. Not every day we're going to be able to do that. Some days we're just going to sit on the couch and going to do absolutely nothing, and that's fine as well. But from time to time, if we're starting to feel down or in that situation, trying to find purpose is a really, really big way to do it. And the last one then is embracing healthy thoughts. So trying to maintain that hopeful outlook. And again, that's not just blind optimism, saying happy, everything's going to be all right all of the time. But it's trying to, embrace the healthy thoughts that go on, accept the ones that can potentially be negative and go, and just label them and take a look at them. But really trying to embrace those ones and what you're grateful for. So if I was to ask a few questions, and these are ones maybe just for yourself, and we won't spend too much time on them, but on ways that we can effectively do this, is that how can you improve your relationships right now? And when I say relationships, I could mean anything from your friends to your interactions that you have with your family at home, or with anyone, with any of your coaches. What can you do to improve your relationships right now? Your well-being. If there was one, I'd focus on this one. Is what can you do to take care of your body and mind at the moment? What are you doing to give your mind a break? Are you getting outdoors as often as you can? If you're interested in mindfulness practice, which has been shown scientifically to be very beneficial for both your mental health and mental well-being, is that something you're interested in looking into? But how can you take care of your body and mind and give yourself a break from time to time? Your goals and your purpose. And this might be on the sporting field, it might be in the academic field, it could be in anything. But what can you do to push yourselves towards what you want to achieve? And then the last one, again, maybe even just taking a second on this one to think, what is important in your life right now, and what are you grateful for? And for those who've looked into this, the word gratitude is again thrown around an awful lot, but actually practicing gratitude it's been scientifically shown to boost our empathy and understanding of others. It lowers our aggression levels, and again, it's hugely beneficial in developing perspective, which is a key component in boosting our resilience. So again, just to wrap up, building our connections, so trying to just do one thing to work on a relationship, taking care of our well-being, just doing one thing. We don't need to do 10 things, don't need to do everything all at once, don't need to do everything in 1 week, but just from time to time, just trying to go through these things, finding purpose, embracing healthy thoughts. So again, practicing perspective. If we're able to do these things, we're on a pretty decent track. And then the last one to finish is just to check in, and initially just to check in with yourself, to see how you're feeling, what do you think has caused it, what's the root of it, and also then to reach out. And that one is really important. So being comfortable and feeling okay to reach out to friends or family members or other services if you feel you need to. And that one, hopefully everybody that is listening to this is in a pretty decent place, but there's going to be some people that aren't. And you might be right now, but try as well with these two lines to use these with your mates, with your teammates, so being a good friend, be a good teammate. Check in with people, see how they are. So check in with them and reach out. So hopefully you're in a good spot, but just from time to time, check in with your mates and reach out to those as well. And that's really important. And again, I think I've taken up probably a little bit too much time, so I'm just going to wrap it up there. And if there was one message, just where possible, try and be sound. So be sound to yourself and be sound to those around you. So I'm going to pass you back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to pass you back over towards Darragh.
Carl, that's really great stuff. Thanks a million for that. A lot of people, I can tell you, glued to this and listening to you there, and you might need to check in with your older brother Donnacha as well. Make sure you don't get another clip for that little dig there, but we'll move swiftly along from that. I do want to bring in. Sorry, Carl.
No, I had to get that one in there with him, you see.
I do want to bring in Kevin and Jimmy, because even just watching that, a couple of things occurred to me, and I know the two boys have been through you know, over the last number of years, plenty of different experiences, and I want to kind of get some of their thoughts on that. And Kevin, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I mean, you've dealt with more than your fair share of injury setbacks over the years, and I couldn't help but think of you when I was listening to Kobe Bryant there. And I guess for yourself, some of what he was saying was probably resonating with you, was it?
It's funny, yeah. When asked me about this webinar, the first thing I thought of with the problems with injury is kind of that loss of control. And I suppose that's the difficult part. You're so used to your routines, everything you can do, and suddenly someone tells you, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, and you don't know what you can do. You lose control over what you can do. But like that, I think what helped me when I was getting back playing was, as he said, look at the things you can have control over. So if you can't use your upper body, go on a bike. If you can't use your legs, maybe do some hand pass. And there's always something you can do, no matter what injury you have. And it's just looking to find the things that you're in control of and improving on those things and building on those things, I suppose.
Do you find that if we talk about what Carl was going through there about the response, do you find that your response changed as you got a little bit older, or maybe as you had to deal with different issues? I mean, I can only imagine the first response to an injury setback is anger, probably.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, and it's a very frustrating thing, like I said, when you lose that ability to plan out or to have control over what you're doing. But I suppose, yeah, as you get older, you might mellow out a bit, and when you've been through it before, you get used to almost the process. And I hate using, I'm robbing the words, I suppose, but these are the kind of things that happen. You just know, right, well, what I have to do, I have to get back on the process. I have to set myself goals and targets and things I can achieve. Like, yeah, I can't look at playing football for the next few months maybe, but what can I do? What can I do to improve myself as a footballer, as a person? And you just really got to focus on the things you're in control of. And I suppose, like you said, as you get older, you kind of become more accustomed to that because you build up good habits. So these things become habits. If you can train yourself into that mindset, it might be difficult at the start, but the more and more you do these things, the easier and easier it becomes.
Okay. Did you find, or would you find that your resilience got stronger? I know that's kind of a very vague way of saying something, but coming back from an injury setback, does that make you better in a strange sort of way, prepared to deal with a defeat on the pitch, even though it's a completely separate thing?
Yeah, I suppose it gives you a bigger picture of why you're there, and there's probably more to football than winning, and you appreciate the fact that you can go out and train with the lads, and the relationships you have with people. You appreciate that more, I suppose, when you are knocked away from it. But I suppose.
Jimmy, I might bring you in there. One of the things Cathal mentioned as part of his roadmap, I guess, at the end, is something that I thought of you straight away, was this idea of building your connections. Because I've kind of heard great reports back, and I've seen you in action. And I've heard from other coaches and players of the work that you would have done, I guess, with the group that came out of minor last year, and you would have spent a long time with them. Building connections was a big part of that, wasn't it, Jimmy?
And again, I suppose for self-call or for people listening, I suppose briefly, I did a postgrad. I'm a qualified psych nurse, and I work as an addiction counsellor, and I've been working in the HC for X amount of years. And I suppose for 20 years, I'm trying to get people to change behaviour and using motivational skills to get them to change behaviour. So then I did a postgrad in health and wellness coaching there in St. Angela's, and then I was involved with the development squad. So I bring it to them, and I suppose I see it over the years. The key here, and it's really interesting listening to Carl, the same words about people. There has to be meaning to what we're doing, and particularly if we're trying to get people to change behaviour or engage in behaviour, be it in a sporting arena or function. So there has to be meaning to it, and the best way of meaning, and you said it's Cathal there, is about connection and purpose. So I suppose when you feed into that and people understand there's a reason for what they're doing, all the work that's required to be a top athlete or to reach a certain point, you see all sorts of things start happening when things make sense to us, I suppose. So we think of ourselves, you know, so there has to be meaning and connection, either connection to your teammates, connection to your group you're with, whatever you're doing, you know. And if that's there, that they're really powerful as regards giving people the focus. Like Kevin obviously had a huge connection to where he wants to get to be able to deal with a very challenging situation for him. So yeah, definitely. And with young people, I was just very surprised the young people are wide open to it as well. You know, I thought maybe a younger 15, 16, but they would it make sense to them that they'll do it. It
takes time though, Jimmy, doesn't it?
It doesn't take that long. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a myth that, you know, and I spent 4 years with lads, but even when you meet someone and how you are with them, and again, Carl alluded to that, or just being nice to someone has an impact on them and you. And I know it sounds very fluffy, but you can start having effects of even relationships or people around you. And just, I suppose, the big thing is that we don't think about what we're doing. And I suppose, again, it was really interesting, this Nicole, about this, and it's true. We're faced with challenges all the time, and if you bring it into a sporting context, and in, say, Sligo here, we do have huge challenges, the size of it, our history, our tradition, or lack of it. But I suppose if we focus on what our strengths are as a person or as a group or as a unit, that could, you know, that can have a really positive effect, and that feeds in then to meaning and connection and their future in this and ambition. It has all those feeders of it. But yeah, it does take time, but I think it takes an attitude, how we are with people. You know, if we come with, look, this is my view and that's it. But if you ask, I suppose we use the thing in my job called motivational interviewing, and you know, and again, that's a way of speaking to people. And it's like there's four main pillars to that. There's engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning. So if you think of it, you have to engage. I mean, actually really engage, and that's relationship building for the person. Focus on them and asking them what their agenda is. It has to be their agenda. Even if we think it's unrealistic agenda, they have to say, you know, what it is that they want out of this situation. And then you're evoking exactly what they want. And then planning is your goal setting, that they've set the agenda, so they set the goal set and you assist them and follow through. So that gives meaning to their whole behaviour change, whatever it is, be it losing weight or kicking with your left foot, or so there's a rugby version of that, I'm sure, CATHAL, you know, of an area that they want to be. But you see, people won't do this because they don't feel confident. Oh, I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. But when it becomes meaningful to them and they say, well, I can do that. I can't do really well now, but it's worth investing now to expose myself to be weak at something in order to improve. So I don't know if that makes answers your question in relation to a time, certainly, but not huge amounts of time, not huge.
You mentioned the motivational interview in there, Jimmy. Could you give us a practical example of that? Because I found it very interesting when you were telling me off air. I hadn't encountered it before.
Well, as I said, it's a way of speaking to people. It's a way of engaging with people, and there's, you know, they're the main, I suppose, the main principles of it are, as I said, you engage in, and that's the key to, if you think of it logically, it's that the first key thing is how you engage with anybody. So be it with me, with a client, maybe with a player. So you get to know the person, you know what's going on in their life. You take it genuine, you know, you're authentic, you're actually interested in this person, as opposed to a football player or a rugby player or whatever. And then the effect of that is that this person genuinely believes, you know, you have my interest here. So you're trying to find out a little bit about what's going on and then what's important for them. And I suppose the big challenge in motivational interviewing is putting away our expert hat. That me working as a coach, not that I'm an expert coach, but say I work in substance misuse, so I'm at this for quite a while, so I could be considered an expert. But people come and I ask them what they want in relation to their substance use. That's the first thing. And they might say something I think is completely unrealistic, but I hold back on that and tease it out with them as to why they think that. And then the next thing is you're focused on, okay, so you're telling me exactly. And then the planning goes, well, what do you want to do about it? And a lot of times I might know this is unrealistic, but sometimes people have to find out that, and then they refocus and they recalibrate. But that takes longer. So it's easy for me to sit and say, tell someone you have a problem with this and you need to do this. Well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in a coaching. It doesn't work in a. So I suppose the player or the person is the expert. They're the expert themselves. And I suppose my job or our job is to tease out with them what they want to do and then help them achieve what they're trying to do. So that's a very rough guide to it. You could go on all day about motivation interviewing. I don't know whether anybody else, I don't know if CATHAL maybe, has he come across it in coaching?
Yeah, I massively. Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting to hear that stuff, Jimmy, and like an awful lot of kind of what you were saying there. I think it just comes back into listening, you know, as much as anything, is that, you know, actually, it sounds easy, as you said, but actually showing up and listening from time to time is quite a difficult thing to do, because I know there's an analogy that often goes is, you know, the first stage of most people's listening is preparing their own response. And I know I'm certainly guilty of that, is that, you know, someone's telling you a story or someone's telling you something that's going on, and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, I've got a funny one about that, and I can't wait to tell my story. And it can be a very difficult thing to sit and to try and actually fully take that information in. And as you said, like with the motivation interview, that's engaging them to begin with. You know, that's engaging them because they're telling their story, they're feeling comfortable. And when someone can get to that realization themselves, it's incredibly powerful. And there was one other thing you mentioned there, and I just think it's so important, and it's lovely to hear it, is that, and look, I know everybody has their own philosophies in coaching and in their own individual work, but I love to hear that it's, you know, it's person first, and then the player second. I just think that's so important. You know, it's not this win at all cost mentality, and Kevin alluded to it as well, speaking about, you know, you maybe it comes with a bit of maturation or age, but you start to realize that it's not just about winning or losing. It's about maybe getting back out in the pitch with your mates, those relationships. I know I retired 4 years ago now, and I only made the decision very recently that I wanted to get in a professional context, because, you know, I miss that and the relationships that you get with it. It's a really, really important thing, but it's more to do with the people rather than to do with the players. And it's lovely to hear that from you, Jimmy. So I just wanted to back that up from everything that I've experienced as well.
Just on that, CATHAL, you know, if we're talking about player first, is a lot of that, if we're talking about developing resilience here or developing mental skills, is a lot of that done individually, or can it be done as a group or as a unit?
I say yes to both. It is, yeah. So I suppose we tend to do maybe more a high level stuff, like an introduction to topics and concepts. You can do that quite easily in a group setting, and there is a time and a place for it. But I think the reality of it is, the most of it is done on an individual basis. And like we try to bring the lads through a bit of a program where we're kind of, you know, laying the foundations. We're starting to develop them, and then it gets to the point where they, you know, are pretty confident in themselves, and they're starting to develop them. So we've kind of got a 3-year program that we would have in our academy, but we're hoping to, if we can get guys a little bit younger than that, is that suddenly we've given them the skills. And being honest with you, by the time, you know, a guy is getting to the 3rd year of his academy, it's the work is pretty much already done. They're the ones challenging you at that point. They're the ones that already have the skills and hopefully the strategies built up. And you asked a question to Kevin about, does your resilience, does it always get bigger and stronger, you know, from your experiences? And I personally, I don't know, does it always get bigger? Maybe you learn more, but that doesn't mean to say as if, you know, you won't find something hard and that the next thing won't knock you for 6. But I suppose it's that trust and knowing that, okay, I know how to get myself back out of here. I know if I'm in this situation, that what are the things to do to get me there. So yeah, I think like to me that's kind of building resilience and developing it and trying to train it. So that's certainly my understanding of it.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Kevin, I might bring you back in just to talk a little bit about the whole area of leadership, and you know that idea of you know getting probably newer members or younger members of a squad to buy into an overall purpose. When you captained Sligo, or when you were one of the more senior players with NUI Galway or with your club in Castleconnor, were you a talker or a listener? What was your own thoughts on your role as a leader?
Yeah, I suppose I probably wasn't the greatest talker, but what I tried to do, I suppose, is, you know, lead by example. And I suppose if that's on the field, I don't think a captain necessarily has to be the one, you know, telling everyone what to do or saying a lot, but the way you approach people or actions or training, you know, has a big impact. And I think Jimmy mentioned it there, you know, how you interact with people. And I suppose I probably only realised it when I became captain, when I felt there was a lot more responsibility on my shoulders. But, you know, every player and everyone has that responsibility, that how they interact or how the first thing they say to someone, you know, has a real impact on how maybe that person will perceive you, or if it's at training, if they'll have a good session. It's just if that first interaction you have with them and it puts them in a positive mind frame for the rest of the session, you know, that's a really powerful thing. And that's not just from a captain. So I was lucky, there was a lot of leaders on the team when I was involved, and, you know, these guys, you just watch them, you know, you don't necessarily have to listen to them, but the way they conduct themselves and the way they train, and, you know, that's more of a leader, I think. But as I said, everyone has that power. You know, it's not just up to a captain. You know, the guy new on the team the first year, he has that responsibility and that ability to impact people and to influence people.
You mentioned on the pitch there, I think one of the qualities that's been mentioned a couple of times about yourself, Kevin, is, you know, the dedication, the preparation that went in, the conditioning that went in, both physically and mentally for yourself in preparing to play. You know, that has come up quite a bit, and that's all tied into leading by example, I guess.
Yeah. Now I don't know how good I was at it, but it's definitely something I tried to work on. But particularly what I noticed, I suppose, and every player finds it easy. You know, it's easy to go out and to train and, you know, do the hard runs, or it's easy to go into the gym, but sometimes the best thing for you might be getting a night's sleep, or it might be spending a half an hour doing mobility work at home, and they're perhaps not so easy to do because you might not see the results straight away, or you don't feel like your muscles are burning, and you don't get maybe those endorphins from exercise. But these are really important things, and I suppose they're probably the harder things. They're not as hard physically, but to mentally get yourself in that mind frame that, you know, it's not just about training 2 or 3 times a week, but what are the small little things that I can do that can really impact your performance and your ability to recover.
Carl, can I bring you back in? Another thing that occurred to me there was when you were talking about being great, or, you know, showing gratitude and being grateful. We sometimes mock elite level sports people that immediately go off on a tirade of how grateful they are to everybody from, I don't know, Mary down the road to Jesus Christ our Lord when they win a match. But it is that, you know, there is that element of I guess appreciation that they've obviously got themselves into that sort of zone where they're grateful for what they have and what they've been given, and to see what they're able to get as a result of that. Yeah,
well, I think it's probably a fair kind of a mock to make from time to time, is that, you know, I'm sure not all of it's genuine, but at the same time, the stuff that is genuine, like there's that word that Jimmy mentioned as well, is that then suddenly there's real purpose to whatever you're doing, is that there's something that's a little bit deeper than, okay, have I just won a game? You know, is that in every game, unless it's a draw, someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. Only one team can lift a trophy at the end of the year. At the end of any score, only one person can kick the point. And if one person gets a starting jersey, someone else is on the bench. And if someone else is on the bench, it means someone else isn't on the squad. So, like, the game is competitive, and I love sport for that. I love competing. It's a great aspect to it, but there's a lot more to it. And being able to be grateful for what you have, and the things that you're able to do, and that which is around you, I think it's very genuine, and I think the impact that it can have on your mental health, on your well-being, and your performance has been well proven and well documented at this stage. So maybe it has gotten to the point where the explanation of it hasn't been very profound, but I think when it's done right, and when you're able to actually look throughout the course of your day, okay, what am I grateful for? And like the example I just have from my own personal experiences, you know, when I finished playing, like 3 months previous to when I had an ankle injury, you know, I was focused on getting as powerful and as explosive in the gym as possible. And then suddenly 6 months down the line, you know, I'm just thinking about, geez, I want to get back running. I want to think in 10 years time, am I going to be able to, you know, if I have a child, am I going to be able to, you know, pick them up? Am I going to be able to bend over and do all these things? And now suddenly you get back and I'm able to go out for a jog on the road, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think what that allows me to do is allow me to look at my experiences and to really enjoy them for what they are. You know, it allows me to be very present in the moment that I have. And again, like I know Kevin kind of mentioned at the start, is that there's an awful lot of these words around at the moment that sometimes you're kind of hesitant whether we should use or not, but they're also very genuine. Is that if you can stay present in the moment, you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more, you'll experience it a little bit more, but it's also going to be very useful for regulating yourself when you're on the pitch in a pressurized situation. You know, if you're starting to think of the consequences of whether I kick this point or whether I miss it, it's not going to be very helpful for what you need to do, for the action you need to do. But if you're able to just focus on the actions, you know, it becomes very helpful to perform the skill. So I think practicing gratitude is an easy thing to say. It's a hard thing to really, you know, get to the meat on, and it takes a bit of time. I still do it. Try to do it every morning. Some mornings I forget. And you know, there's a direct correlation between when I'm doing the things that take care of my own mental health and mental well-being, and when I'm in good form and when I'm not. You know.
Jimmy, any thoughts on that? Because you know, it is an important mindset. Because there's excuses for everything out there if you want to look for them. It depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, and again, it's just the same thing keeps coming up, and I suppose, again, it's all language, and people, oh God, be grateful, and it sounds really American and all the rest. But I suppose the best way I think it is, we're very slow for some reason, maybe us as human beings, to acknowledge what's going on around us. So we're very focused on extremes of up and down. So what we're talking about there is that I'm here and it's a summer's day and I'm competitive and it's just great to be here. And absolutely, then when we lose, it's very disappointing. But again, it's about perspective. Well, only one team can win, but then you miss out on the other stuff. It's all real, I suppose. There's no point in talking about stuff that isn't real. And I'm having such fun here. You can't say that to yourself if you're not having fun. But if you're having fun, why wouldn't you say that to you? Because there'll be other days, and this is back to Carl talking about it, like the last 3 months, this is a very difficult situation. COVID is absolutely a difficult situation. But even acknowledging that out loud rather than, oh, it's no problem for me and I'm grand and I'm doing this, and that seems to, and that's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for you mentally, and that you're trying to be something that you're not, and be it people who are feeling down, as I said to you, or feeling sad. If someone feels sad, that's a normal human emotion. It's you know, it's particularly if you've lost something, you lost your football team because of the COVID, but even acknowledging that, and by doing that, you also can just turn around and say, God, this is lovely today, I'm in good form today. Just that second of a thought. So it's about perspective, and I think we don't do it as coaches sometimes, and it's kind of gets thrown away as being fluffy. It's not fluffy, it's so completely real. But I understand why people say, oh, you can't be going around saying, oh my God, I'm so happy to be alive, and like a Zen God or something like that. But have a look around you and say, well, acknowledge what's happening. So in sport, 99% what happens is healthy and beneficial. Absolutely, there's a 1% that can be devastating losing a game, but I would argue 99%. If people were to stop and think about it, I'm out here now, I'm around people I like, people have similar views to me, I feel fit, I feel active, I feel healthy. Sure, what's not to like about that? But we don't acknowledge it, even internally, you know, and I suppose that then has this effect that we're meant to be perfect beings then when things go wrong, and we're meant to, you know, it's absolutely, if you lose a game by a point, it's absolutely heartbreaking, like it's desperate stuff. But after a while, you can see the other stuff comes back into your head. Well, I did enjoy this and I did enjoy that. So it eases, it helps your resilience. The other thing too, I meant to say it to, I suppose when we're talking about my own experience, and I suppose I would particularly working with these young folk for the last 5 or 6 years, and is that I suppose the feeling I do feel is I'm so lucky, and I feel grateful to use that phrase, because the people I've met, the experiences I've had, this evening, wouldn't know Kevin, wouldn't have met Carl, yourself, I could go on all day, and I do think, God, I'm so lucky. And that helps then for the more difficult stuff when it's stressful, but it's, if we just acknowledge both, I suppose, is my point. You know, we're very reluctant to acknowledge all the facts, because they're all facts, good, bad, and different, but we kind of just, we won't, you know, say I feel wonderful, because you don't do that. But then when things go wrong, as they will, we're sometimes we're not able for it, and we feel, and it has a kind of a magnifying effect on how we feel. So that's my, I don't know, what do you think?
Just it's slightly divergent, but it is related, because it can be applied to life as well as to the GAA pitch, Jimmy. But the whole idea of goal setting there, because it's come up a few times now. You know, everyone can't win all the time. It just doesn't work like that. You're going to lose. You're probably going to lose more often than you win. The idea of goal setting, I know, is something you've invested a lot of work and a lot of time in. Can you talk us a little bit about that?
Sure, and I'm like, you know, that's as old as time itself, goal setting, but it's about language, and I suppose it's back to this motivation and what motivates people, and, you know, meaning, and what goal setting allows is to give meaning to what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that gives relatedness. Yeah, this makes sense to me. But I suppose the big thing about goal setting is, going back to the motivation interviewing, it has to be led by the individual, even, and a lot of times it will counter, say, our experience, as in maybe we're older, maybe more experienced, or thinking that's not realistic. But rather than telling someone that, so goal setting is fine, but it's, the big thing is the connection and the connectedness, and building the trust, and eliciting what the person thinks, or the player thinks, not what the player thinks you want to hear. Or, well, say this to him, I want to score 2-5 in a final, you know. So goal setting is great, but it can be counterproductive if it isn't done, and it's a waste of time if it isn't done. You know, if the person coming into you doesn't buy into it, doesn't see the sense in it, sees a person coming into a player, should say, God, it's great, I can tease this out with this fella, and he's just kind of helped me in the background, and I pare it down, and then I can go and practice this, and he's there to help me out, and go back, even tell him I'm doing this, as opposed to the goal setter being the driver of this. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, goal setting is great, but again, it's another one of these terms that's thrown about the place, but it's all based on how we are as facilitators in the goal setting process. So it's fantastic, but it can be almost counterproductive if it isn't done with the player at the center of it, or the person at the center of it. And a lot of times that will contravene, like, again, my own job, people come to me and they say they have this goal in relation to their substance use, and I know it's very, very unlikely, but I cannot show even physically how that is. But my job is to get them to talk that out, and then they reset their goals, because people, when things make sense to people, they'll pick realistic goals. So yeah, I think it's great, but there's a caveat with it.
Okay. Great stuff, Jimmy. I'm going to finish up on this one, Kevin, with yourself. The whole culture of being part of a team, the connections that you make. I just wonder, just to kind of wrap things up, is that one of the things, when you haven't been involved, I guess, with the senior panel for the last couple of years, is that the thing you miss nearly most, is those kind of friendships and the bonds you create?
Definitely, yeah. And I think you touched on the culture. To be, I think that's the magical thing about sport, is to be part of something that's bigger than yourself, to be part of a group of guys that are all striving for one goal. You know, it's something that you might necessarily experience in any other part of life. And like you talked about, going through tough times together, going through good times together, that does build a really incredible bond with people that it's hard to replicate in other circumstances. And I suppose, yeah, the relationships are really almost the best thing that comes out of sport. Because at the end of the day, like, they're the lasting things, like the rest are memories, but you can really build relationships with people, and they can last a lifetime.
Gentlemen, you've been more than generous with your time this evening. I really do appreciate you. CATHAL, Kevin, Jimmy, thanks very, very much for joining us on the webinar. Can I suggest to those watching at home, there's a a podcast as part of the Connacht GAA podcast series with Stephen Henry on the growth mindset. That's well worth checking out as well. It's available on Spotify and also on this YouTube Sligo GAA Coaching and Games page. If you flick through it, you'll find our webinar on nutrition that we recorded a couple of weeks ago, and it's well worth looking over that as well. Thanks to Eamon and Louise in the background for helping put all this together, but thanks especially CATHAL, Kevin and Jimmy once again.
Cheers, Darragh. Cheers, Colin. Cheers, Kevin.
Bye. Take care.